Very good morning, everyone. I see still people are joining in. So, I'll just start with the introductions. So, very welcome you all to this session. So, in this session, we'd be looking into the report findings covering, the affordable e-mobility options for low and middle income countries. So here in this session, I have with me on the panel Mr. Luis, who is from UNEP. He is a program management officer in the Sustainable Mobility Unit. Uh, he is currently based out of Panama. And we also have Mr. Rodrigo. He is a senior mechanical engineer working in Reborn Electric Motors, and he is based out of Chile. So we are also expecting one more panelist, Mr. Donald. He's a used vehicle dealer from St. Lucia. So very warm welcome again to everyone. So I'll request Mr. Lewis to give the welcoming address.
Thank you, Shai. Thank you, Rodrigo, and good morning for everyone. Buenos días para todos y todas. First, I would like to thank pManifold to organize this webinar session for presenting our study in affordable and e-mobility options for low and middle income countries, and especially to present the analysis on used electric vehicles imports and the retrofit from internal combustion engine vehicles to electric vehicles. This activity specifically is under the umbrella of the Global Electromobility Program that UNEP leads at global level, and the Latin American support and investment platform for electromobility that belongs to the Global Electromobility Program. In the Global Electromobility Program, UNEP is supporting low and middle income countries to deploy sustainable electromobility programs in their countries and in their cities. And we have different mechanisms to provide this support. And one of them is the possibility for developing these studies that basically analyze those actions that electromobility implies at some point. And in this case, we are trying to analyze the two things, electromobility and used vehicles, and electromobility, and for sure retrofitting. In the Global Electromobility Program, we provide technical support to 50 countries, and this technical support also means to provide support on the development of institutional frameworks, electromobility strategies, but also developing technical studies that the one that we are going to present this, and pilots and demonstration projects. This is part of a global discussion that we have in working groups, in global working groups. So this analysis is coming from the discussion of different, from a discussion with different institutions from the private sector, from the public sector, from different countries, and also from a very deep data collection analysis process. In Latin America, specifically, we are supporting 8 countries in the whole region, three of them in the Caribbean sub-region, 1 in Central America, and the rest in South America. So for these countries, we are basically providing trainings and capacity building sessions. We are facilitating community of practice sessions, and we also have a help desk option where the different countries can place their questions about electromobility. So today we are going to have a session on the importance of the importing process of used vehicles from high-income countries to low-income countries, and also to consider how those at some point, how those importing units will be electric units. And the other thing is how those internal combustion engine units could be at some point or could be part of a retrofitting process. And this is basically what our colleagues from pManifold and our panelists will cover the day-to-day. Last, I would like to thank pManifold for presenting this study and to our panelists for sharing their experience on those topics. And last but not least, I would like to thank to the participants for your time, and also your questions will be very important to analyze the different angles of this study. So I will invite you to share your questions, your comments in the Q&A chat box that we have in this webinar, and we will take some of them during the presentation and share that with our panelists and with pManifold people. So thank you, and now I would like to give the word to give the floor again to my colleague Akshay.
Thank you so much, Luis. At pManifold, we are proud to support UNEP conducting this study. So I'll be spending the next 20 minutes walking all of you through the key findings from our work. And during this time, I'll encourage everyone to put in your questions in the Q&A tab. We'll be having a quick Q&A session after the presentation. We'll try to address most of your questions during this time. So yeah, so this is the study that we have done with UNEP. So we have looked into different low and middle income countries and assessed how the used EVs and ICE to EV retrofitting can be affordable options to adopt more and more e-mobility in these regions. So to start with, this slide shows, the key importance of low and middle income countries and the vehicles and the emissions related to these vehicles coming uh, in the transportation sector. So on the left, you can see in 2020, there are about LMICs contribute to about 48% of emissions in the global transport. And the growth of vehicles in the LMS is expected to grow at a higher rate than the high income countries. The reasons behind being the increase in the population and also rising incomes and the power purchase parity in these LMICs. So I think this underscores an importance how important it is to effectively manage the motorization in the LMICs to actually reduce the emissions in the future. So also one of the key characteristics that we have come across in the LMICs is the dependence on the import of used vehicles in most of these countries. So on the left, if you can see the if you see the new passenger sales that are happening globally, so LMICs are contributing to 15 to 17%. Whereas on the right, the chart which is showing the used passenger car sales globally. So LMSs are contributing to 80%. So this shows a difference in the dynamics or the adoption of vehicles within the LMSs where most of the vehicles are used which are imported from the high income countries. So when we look at the global effort towards reducing the emissions from the transportations, so e-mobility has picking up in a very rapid phase, and most of this contribution is in the developed economies where the China, Europe, and the United States contribute to the majority of the e-mobility adoption, whereas if we look at the other parts of the world, even through LMSs, the adoption is still low at about 1%. So we have looked into like what are the challenges the LMSs face in terms of our adopting e-mobility. So these are the top three buckets. The high cost of the technology and lack of infrastructure in the developing economics, and also the policy and regulatory support which is required for the e-mobility options. So looking at these challenges and looking at the growing phase of the e-mobility adoption in major economies. So I think the import of used EV or the ICE vehicles which are at the phase of scrapping can be retrofitted into EVs and help LMICs adopt the e-mobility solutions and grow the e-mobility within all the LMICs. So if we look at the used EV, uh, since the adoption is increasing in the major developed economies, and it is expected that more and more EVs are going to retire or retire and maybe going to other countries for the extended life. So here the projections that we have did based on the moderate adoption of e-mobility in the developed economies, anywhere between 1 million to zero point 0.3 million to 1 million of used EVs are expected to come into LMICs. So this gives an opportunity for LMSs to rightly adopt the e-mobility. So other aspect is the ICE to EV retrofitting, the internal combustion engine to EVs. So there are already a lot of companies working in this space across different vehicle segments, and through because of some stringent regulations and phasing out of ICE in most of the developed nations. So a lot of these vehicles are expected to retire, and it gives an opportunity to increase the the life cycle of these vehicles and convert into EVs, so that in the operational phase it will have even less emissions over its lifetime. So these are the two different options, and we'll be looking at both of these options in detail in these coming slides. So when we talk about the used EVs, so firstly we'll look at the overall used car that are being traded globally. So if we see around 3 million used cars have been traded, coming majorly from four different exporting nations, the exporting regions, probably the EU, Japan, USA, and South Korea. And the major reason being the vehicles that are being retired in these economies is stringent road worthiness, and also phasing out of ICE in most of the countries. And even EVs are contributing to some part of the used car trade. So the also the share of it is also increasing. So if we look at used EVs in 2022, about 98,000 of the used electric vehicles have been traded globally, and even within the about 26% are pure battery electric vehicles, whereas rest 84% or 74% are the plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. So there is also one trend that is being observed within the used EV. The trading is the battery electric share is continuously increasing. So the 6% of this share in 2017 has risen to 26% by 2022. So we see a lot more used BEVs that are expected to trade globally, and this provides opportunity for LMICs. So this is the ICEVs, or the ICE cars, the used ICE cars that are traded in 2022. If we see the major economies from which these used cars are originated are EU, South Korea, USA, and Japan. And on the right side, we can see the major importing countries. So here, 80% of these, the used ICEVs that are being traded globally are coming into LMICs, and the major importers are seen to be like Ukraine, UAE, and Russia, and we also have a lot more other LMICs that are importing these used ICEVs. Similarly, the trade of used EVs globally were around 98,000 in 2022. Here 72% of these used EVs are traded in LMICs. So again, the major economies are USA, Japan, and EU, where USA is contributing to the EVs, and mostly the plug-in hybrids are coming in from the USA. Uh, this is about the used EV trade that is currently happening. And if we look at the projections that we have seen, the number is increasing with the adoption of e-mobility in these major economies. As I mentioned, it is expected like point 3 million EVs minimum by 2030, and it can reach up to 0.8 million, where we looked into different scenarios how these used EVs can be coming into LMICs. So this gives an understanding of what is the quantum of the used EVs that are being traded, and how much LMICs can adopt. So we also looked into multiple countries, and we have noted here the top 5 findings here, just to understand what are the learnings from these different countries. So when we looked into Mauritius, I think there has been a good policy push there to in order to adopt used EVs as well as EVs in general. So what we have seen is like the excise duty for the used EVs is completely waived off, and also there are some reduction in the other taxes like the road tax and also the registration, which are cut by half. So this is making the used EVs more economic, or the cost effective solution for the Mauritius in particular. So if we look at the numbers when we are comparing, the used ICE that are coming in, the used hybrids that are coming in, also the used EVs. So even though the cost, the cost of vehicle when we speak without any taxes, used EV is higher. But when after the importation, the additional taxes that are being applied, so by rightly having these interventions, the used EVs are becoming a better option here, and they also have a age limitation of 4 years, which is also just allowing the quality EVs that are coming into the country. And one of the major thing the Mauritius also did is avoid individuals to kind of import the used EVs on their own. The used EVs only can be imported by an agency, which is again the agencies are regulated such that the vehicles that are coming in are rightly tested and allowed for safeguarding the customers. Uh, this thing. And if you also look into the TCO, which again translates into huge benefits for the used EV. So overall, this case shows that right policy push can improve the adoption of used EVs in the country. Then we have looked into Cambodia. Here, within the the country's vehicle share, the used vehicles that are coming in contribute to a major chunk. But however, BEVs or the battery electric vehicles in the the vehicle mix is low. When we look into the reasons for it, we have seen that very old vehicles are also coming into Cambodia, and which is creating problems, and the TCO, when we compared for a vehicle that is coming in at the fifth year of its life, so we see the battery replacement is required. And with this battery replacement, the used EV is costing as much as the new BEV that is coming in. So here we have observed that although the used BEVs are coming, there has to be some regulations around what is the age that should be kind of allowed into the country to have a good life after importing into the LMICs. Then we have also looked into Mongolia. So here also there are some good interventions around reduction in the taxes. But however, the taxes are applicable to both hybrid and also the battery electric vehicle. So here, because of that, even though hybrids are not really having a benefit of lower emissions, but they are still getting an advantage, and they are costing much lower than the battery electric vehicles, which is kind of hampering the growth of used BEVs in the country. So this kind of underscores the country to have a the clear bifurcation or the division of the different vehicle segments, vehicle powertrains like the hybrid and the pure battery electric vehicles, and our right policies to push the most effective ones to kind of reduce the emissions. So I think this was the one of the recommendation that we have came up for the when we look into the Mongolia case. Similarly, when we look at the Kenya, so Kenya already has some regulations in place where there are directives to avoid the vehicles which having a lesser state of health of a batteries, which is less than 80%, and there is also a ban on vehicles that are more than 8 years old. So this has created the quality check of the used EVs that are coming in into the country, and ensuring that only the vehicles with the higher life are entering the country. I think this is a positive move to kind of adopt the used EVs. Then we also looked into Ukraine. So there was a, increase in the adoption of EVs in the Ukraine, and when we looked into it, so major chunk of it is coming from the used EVs that are imported into the country. The major reason was the skilled technicians within the country were able to kind of even replace the battery and offer the after market, after importing the running condition, they were able to give the maintenance and supporting the operations. I think this also underscores like one of the important thing is to have a good skill set and the technical knowledge to adopt EVs within the country. So these are the top kind of 5 case studies that we have uh, covered detailedly in our report. So through these case studies and studying and talking with stakeholders within these two in the used EV ecosystem, so we have came upon the key gaps across the value chain of these used EVs. So the first being some of the gaps in the import side, where the quality check of used EVs needs to be improved in the LMICs, having a better health assessment. There is a requirement of a pre-shipment inspection for the used EVs to ensure the quality of EVs that are coming in. And in the second stage, when we look in the resources that are required, so repairability of EVs is one of the challenge, and skilled workforce or the technicians are required to kind of adopt the used EVs, and also requirement of spare parts and others that are required. So these are the challenges that we have came across, and we have also looked into what are the solutions that are required for improving the adoption of used EVs. So I'll just quickly walk through, but you can again go through in the report like what are the recommendations, how they are relevant. So the other part of the affordable option was the ICE to EV retrofitting. Uh, this involves replacing of the existing internal combustion engine to the EVs. So this gives some advantages for some of the segments in adopting the e-mobility solutions. So uh, so if we look the the major advantage was in the livelihood segments like the two, three-wheelers and also light commercial vehicles. So here also we have looked into multiple solutions that are offered by different companies. So this is one of the example from Rwanda where REM is one of the company providing the two-wheeler retrofit option, which has been a very affordable option within the users of two-wheelers, be it the commercial or the passenger segments. So EV, the E two-wheeler driver could, also save higher if we see here in case of an e-moto driver. So with the ICE, the savings were about 2.5 USD per day, whereas, the savings are doubled when they are using the electric two-wheeler. So this, even with the less investment through the retrofit EV, with these savings, they were able to achieve a payback of 6 months. So we have seen a similar kind of case studies across different countries. So we have also seen a three-wheeler case that was in India, where a similar, the savings for the user of three-wheeler is being, you know, converting into lower payback period of just 7 months for the three-wheelers. So this is one of the solution. And we also seen into low the commercial vehicles, light commercial vehicles. This is also an example from India where the TCO is much favorable for the retrofit EVs. So with these, along with these three case studies or the three solutions, we have also looked into some of the others where in the niche, the safari vehicles of Tanzania. So eMotion has done some retrofits in there, and they were able to achieve a lower operational cost. The vehicles being operated very far from the the urban or the city regions. Even carrying fuel to this location was actually uh, costing them more. With the adoption of the retrofits and the e-mobility, they were able to cut down their operational cost marginally. And although the cost of retrofit is similar to the new ICE vehicle, the benefits of operational has improved the adoption of these vehicles. And also in the Latin America specifically, we have came across uh, the solution offered by Auto Libre, where they have already done retrofits of more than 2,800 vehicles. And uh, they were able to establish the network of workshops which were able to provide a standardized kits, and also kind of giving the maintenance and operational support for the four-wheelers that are being retrofitted. And there was also one pilot case on the bus retrofit in the Kenya, uh, where the diesel bus was converted into electric, but the costs involved in it were much higher, and it was just a pilot. And we also looked into other Latin American case study. We also have our one of the speaker from the company where they have retrofitted buses within the mining areas, like the buses that are running there. And they were able to scale the retrofitting and achieve some good numbers in deploying the e-buses within the mining sector. We'll be hearing more about from him in the panel discussions. So these are the findings that are coming in from the ICE2 retrofit segment. And also within these studies, we have also identified some of the key challenges and what are the solutions for these solutions. And in the source and import, there is a challenge in availability of high quality retrofit kits, and also some import restriction and the tariffs that are higher, which is costing the taxes on be it battery or in the power electronics, which is increasing the cost for the retrofit. And hindering the growth of it. So some of the incentives and advocacy for these retrofit also as part of the policies can improve this adoption. And there is also requirement of skilled technicians to undergo this retrofit and provide the maintenance throughout its operational life. And also there were some gaps and the solutions observed in the registration and also in the operation phase of it, where the regulations can also play a good role here, where the having a proper approval and homologation of the vehicles can give a customer the confidence to adopt these vehicles and also improve the further growth in other segments as well. So these were some of the key findings from both the used EVs and the ICE to EV retrofitting as some of the affordable options. So I'll just take a pause here and I'll see if there are any questions from the participants uh, to answer. So, Luis,
Thank
if you
you.
can, yeah,
Yes, actually, thank you very much for the presentation. I think this is a very important topic to discuss at global level because we have a market interaction between high-income countries and low and middle-income countries in terms of the fleet that we are consuming here in different regions like Latin America or Africa. And we have had some good questions from our participants. I have selected some of them, but I'm pretty sure the other question maybe will receive an answer during the panelist session. So maybe we can start here with the first one saying that the global north transformation to electric mobility will produce a high amount of exports of used vehicles, internal combustion used vehicles export to the global south. And at that point, that will decrease the price of internal combustion engine vehicles in the global south. So how to compete between those vehicles coming with low price and electromobility? With it could be used electric vehicles, or it could be retrofit vehicles.
Right, right. I think this is a very good question. I mean, in terms of understanding how the imported used EVs which are being retired in the high income countries, which are competing with the again the used EVs or the new EVs that are adopted in LMSs. I think what we have seen in our study as well is like one of the option can be the retrofit of these ICEVs that are coming in, and also restricting very old ICEVs that are coming into LMICs. I think both the regulations kind of restricting these ICE vehicles, as well as some of the policies that will be that can push the retrofitting of these ICE. I think these can be some of the solutions to kind of address it for the LMSs.
Thank you. And in those countries that already have received or are receiving used electric vehicles, do they have any issue on registration, on asking for insurance, asking for maintenance services? How, for example, the vehicle dealer sector is prepared, and the whole institutional sector is prepared to receive those use electric vehicles?
Right, right. So I think if I understand rightly, this is about the registration of the used EVs after importing into the LMICs. Uh, so we have looked into it, and here we have given some recommendations, on having training or capacity building of the national transport authorities on having the registration templates, and also having the classification of vehicles for the different powertrains. I think one case we have seen in Kenya where there was a clear classification of vehicles, that is already defined by the Kenyan Road Transport Authority, which has, uh, I think, which has helped in focusing specific vehicle segments, and also having the pre-inspection of the used EVs, and having the certificate which shows that the EVs that are coming in are of good quality, with the SOH being good enough for extending the life of these vehicles. I think ensuring these both, like within the importing country having a right registration template and classification, and also ensuring through the pre-inspection of the vehicles that are coming in, having a right SOH and a right age of the vehicles. I think these can address these problems.
Thank you, Akshay. So there are a couple more questions, maybe on retrofit. I would like to pass to the next session, because maybe we can cover those questions there. But before that, I would like to ask you one question. Is there any country that used to ban used vehicles and then accept now use electric vehicles?
Okay, so you were asking if they have already banned earlier
No,
the.
if in the past, if in the past there is a country that used to ban use vehicles, and now they see use electric vehicles as a possibility to decarbonize their transport sector.
Okay, okay. I'm not sure of any that particular country, but I think probably Kenya has banned vehicles earlier, and they are open for the used EVs. I'm not sure, but there might be countries which are doing this.
Sure. Okay, thanks. And we can move to the next session. So you will be the moderator for the next session with our panelists, Rodrigo and Donald. And I just want to give the welcome to Rodrigo and Donald. Thank you for participating. And the floor is your Akshay.
Sure, sure, sure. So we'll be just having now the panel discussions with our two speakers that have joined us today. So I'll just quickly introduce them to the participants. So the first panelist, we have Mr. Rodrigo from Reborn Electric Motors. So he's a senior mechanical engineer, and he has been playing a key role in developing the buses, especially the 44 seater passenger bus within the Reborn passenger EV line. And thank you for joining us today. And we also have Mr. Donald, who is the used vehicle dealer, and is joining from St. Lucia visit. And he has more than 30 plus years in the corporate sector, and handling the import of used vehicles. So very welcome to you, Donald, and thank you for joining us today. So my first question would be to you, Donald. So if you can unmute, and let's see if we can hear you.
Oh, hi, good morning to all. Donald Doris from St. Lucia, Managing Director of DDO2 Imports. Yes, and we're happy to be with the panelists today and to discuss more thoroughly about hybrid vehicles and the impact in St. Lucia, and how we ought to go about dealing with those issues. So, as an importer, yes.
Yeah, so Donald, my first question to you is, in the lines that you are just starting to talk about, are you already seeing some of the, used EVs that are coming into the market? I mean, from your experience, and do you see any particular policies, or the regulations, or a kind of mindset from the users in the St. Lucia, which are driving these imports? If you can shed some light on that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. From what we have seen from a consumer perspective, a lot of customers are now migrating from ICE engines to EVs. And the biggest shift that we have seen thus far is the savings. And because of the implementation of policies for St. Lucia, meaning when we import certain vehicles, the vehicles need to be at a certain standard, quality in terms of workmanship, quality in terms of the body, etc. We see a lot of customers migrating more towards the hybrid and electric vehicles. I mean, although we are not 100% ready for the electric vehicles because we need to put proper infrastructure in place to allow clients to migrate to the electric. But so far, we've seen a strong move or vibrant move to the hybrid vehicles.
Great. I think it's also we have seen in our statistics there are a lot of the plug-in hybrids that are coming in within the the segment of EVs. So I think that is very good to know that the penetration of hybrids is increasing and there is increased interest from the users as well. So do you also see any challenges in terms of the hybrid also has some batteries within them. So do you see any challenge after importing the battery of the health of the battery? Are there any challenges in the operational phase that you have seen? How it is being handled within the region?
Yeah, from what we have seen is a lot of customers, although they gravitate towards the hybrid electric vehicles, but the question that they keep asking is, what happens if my batteries go bad? Can I get a replacement immediately? How do I get it imported into St. Lucia and resell? Where do we store it? And those questions are valid questions, and I think we as a country need to determine how we move forward with that, because we're ordering those vehicles used primarily from Japan and the UK, and they do have a shelf life. And the question is, what happens, after 10 years? What happens if there's, a major fault? How do we get a and replacement? So I think that's something that we have to look at very closely and perhaps work with the government to see how we could, facilitate and migrate customers as we see necessary.
Okay. So, in order to address these challenges, do you see already, the existing mechanics or the the workshops already developing this skill within Saint Lucia, or do you see
Yes.
opportunities coming in?
A lot of the mechanics are actually doing their own learning to understand the technology and to deal with faults and vehicle restoration. But I think from a country perspective, I think as a government we should take that leadership to ensure that mechanics are trained properly, they understand the technology properly and how to deal with faults. I think that is key, because if the mechanics do not have the foreknowledge to address it, then that becomes a very big problem. So we need to ensure that we have the facilities in place and the right technical team to address those issues when they come up. So training ought to play a pivotal role in really rolling out the EVs and hybrids in St. Lucia.
Great. Just a last question, before I move to Mr. Rodrigo. So what kind of, the policies or, what kind of interventions do you foresee when it comes to, the skilling of the workshops? I mean, you mentioned the presently they are themselves kind of learning, but do you see any specific region where, there is some of the interventions required? If you have already came across anything.
In terms of what, training, or in terms of dealing with?
Yes, trainings.
I mean, so far, I think, their basic courses are being offered at the 𝗟 Community College. So training could be done from that standpoint. However, I think what is mostly required is hands-on training and understanding how to do a rip and replace, how to do fault restoration. So I think all registered garages, it should be made mandatory to allow those persons to train to move to the next level. Because unless there's a paradigm shift, it becomes a problem later on. So I think, from a country perspective, I think we need to take that level of training very, very seriously and put mechanisms in place to ensure that we have the right brains to deal with those kind of challenges when we are faced with it.
Sure. I think these are very good points, and we have also covered in our recommendations. So maybe I'll come
Yes, because
the
yeah, what I also see coming though is maybe governments may probably set duty regulations for younger hybrid vehicles, and those older than a certain age, they may either prohibit it or they may probably charge a little more taxes. So although in St. Lucia we don't have any discrimination of age limit, so we could import whatever vehicle we want, any age, but I see that change, happening pretty soon, given the fact that people are generally sharing some of the concerns about the hybrid vehicles, the what ifs. Yeah, so we need to have processes in place to address that even before it happens.
Sure. I think that is the valid suggestion. I think that has been coming out through our study as well. So now I'll just move on to Mr. Rodrigo. So if you can kind of give a background of what Reborn is doing, and also there is one question in the chat that I'm seeing around retrofit where question on how retrofitted vehicles perform operationally, and also how the heavy batteries are when they are fixed into ICEVs, how exactly they are handled, or what kind of challenges do you see. So if you can also integrate this with your introduction to the Reborn and the kind of solution you have developed.
Perfect, no problem. So Reborn Electric Motor was born to retrofit the public buses from diesel to electric. And due to Chile's regulations on retrofitting, it currently bans retrofitted vehicles from operating public roads. So then we saw the opportunity to work with the mining sector, because here in Chile, the biggest mine operates some of the largest networks of private roads in the country. So they can have retrofitted buses for their operation, be retrofitted, and be able to operate them in the mining sector. So we were founded in 2016, and we now have delivered the biggest electric vehicle fleet for a mine in the world to Codelco El in 2022. And then they are being currently operating around 120 buses to the operation without some major issues. And to address the question you asked, that the weight of the batteries and all the components, it depends on the extent of the retrofit, because when we do the retrofit and we do the engineering of the retrofit, we take in account the requirements of the client in terms of how many passengers do they need to transport, how rough the terrain is, because in the mining sector, the corrosion between water, salts, El Teniente is 3,000 feet above sea level. So there is snow, there is water, there is salt, there is sulfuric acid. We have to take in account everything. And with that, we change I think, the disposition of batteries, the quantity, the quality, and the power of the driving system, because when we add 1 ton or 2 ton of weight, it impacts on the drivability of the driver. And we take all of this into account, and we give the client the best product we can achieve with them to check all the marks that they need. And currently, we have really good feedback of the drivers, because they pretty much very much driving a silent bus now compared to the diesel. And the power output of the torque of the electric motors is quite better than those of the diesel vehicles. So we have seen very positive feedback on the retrofitting of electric buses in the mining sector.
Okay, okay. So when you mentioned, sizing it to the user requirement, when we are retrofitting from ICE to EVs, choosing of right motor capacity and also the right battery. So if you can give some insights on, the EVs that have been retrofitted by Reborn, like what is the range that these vehicles are providing, and also what is the the typical maybe rating of the batteries for size of buses?
Yeah, we currently have two models of EV buses, one of 24 passenger and one of 44 passengers. Both are rated for 200 kilometers of range. That's the range we achieved was the optimum between us and the client in terms of how many batteries we can put in the vehicles and not affect the quantity of passengers they will transport, and the routes that they operate they after day. The routes that they operate range from 50 kilometers, and they do like 5 to 6 shifts a day. So they charge once every day, and they're really happy with that autonomy. And we also have discussed this with operators for the um, public bus operation. And with them, we see that they need, I don't know, 100 kilometers of range, because one route of public transport is like 30 kilometers, 50 kilometers. And then when they do the driver shift change, they can charge and they have another 50 kilometers to go. So we can adapt very well to the customer needs in this case.
Great, great. I think even through the retrofit, if I understand, the even the passenger capacity, without deviating from it, the retrofit can kind of give a reasonable range of 200 to 200, and it is sufficient for driving the vehicle maybe in two shifts. I think that is good to know. And also, I mean, the next question would be around the supply chain for the retrofitting kits, or the components that are required. So what is the current approach of Reburn, and if there are any kind of plans to also scale this retrofitting solution to other segments of vehicles, be it like three-wheelers or the four-wheelers that are plying in the region.
Yeah, so just to compare some of the cost, we are seeing now that the retrofitted buses are the same price as a new diesel bus, and like 40 to 50% more expensive than a new electric bus. That's kind of changed between countries because, well, in Chile we have a really open economy, so we are able to source like really high quality components from everywhere in the world and incorporate them into our buses. That kind of give us in Chile a very competitive advantage in the region, because we can export some of these retrofitted buses or new electric buses using components from all around the world and incorporate them here in Chile. We see that now there is a new law that is going to be approved in Chile that will allow us to sell retrofitted buses and to operate in the public road network. So we see that now there will be, because there is a lot of interest in small operators in small towns that have fleets of dozens, if not hundreds, of old diesel buses. They're really interested in having this retrofitted to be able to operate them in the day-to-day operations. So we see there's a lot of interest, and there are also another companies that have a fleet of small trucks for like moving containers in patios and smaller vehicles that also want them to have them retrofitted.
Sure, sure. I think one point that you have mentioned would be my next question to you around, the regulations. I think you have mentioned that there are already some regulations that will be coming in. What do you see? What kind of regulations would be these, and how it would be, impacting your operations, both, kind of giving, the customer a confidence on the kits that you are providing, and also on the costing for you, like how do you see, and what kind of regulations do you expect?
We see that the regulation that is being discussed is quite well planned, because it will certify some workshops and plans to make a retrofit and to be able to sell them to the public. So customers and the public in general will see that the plants that are retrofitting these vehicles are certified in a way that they put in safe and quality components in the vehicles, and letting them pass through the revisions of every other new vehicle, and have some kind of assurance that there is a standard between every retrofitted vehicle that they are selling.
Okay. So do you also have, workshops that are already certified by you, who are taking, the maintenance and other aspects of it, or the Reborn themselves, yourselves are offering this maintenance of the retrofitted vehicles?
For now in Chile, in Santiago and other cities, there is a lot of electric buses, and there are some of the repair shops that are certified to repair these electric vehicles. But we have also been approached by companies that import new electric vehicles, not just buses, to help them with the repair and guarantees and program maintenance of these vehicles.
Great, great, great. So I think I'll just have one more question to Mr. Donald. So this would be, regarding the used vehicles, or be it hybrids, or the EVs that are coming in, they would be having some batteries. So are there any regulations to kind of have kind of handling these batteries, and how it is kind of as a dealer, what is your role in kind of this whole ecosystem of battery handling, the end of life battery handling? Donald, can you hear us? If you are trying to talk, I think you are on mute. Okay, I think there might be some issue on Donald's side. I think we are also right on time. Maybe I'll just give the floor to Luis, if you can kind of conclude and give thank you note for everyone. Yeah.
So first of all, I would like to thank to our panelists here, to Rodrigo and Donald, for their participation in this important webinar that they present this topic that is relevant for those countries that are starting or are implementing electromobility programs. And thank you for pManifold for presenting these results. We would like to invite you to download the study report that is available in our electromobility toolbox. It's available in the chat box. And I think today we have seen examples on how some countries have been facing the vehicle demand, the transport service demands, with two options, which are the imports of used electric vehicles and the retrofit from internal combustion engine vehicles to electric vehicles. Something that I would like to highlight is one comment from one colleague here, Arturo, and I think is it's important to work in both sides, the export side and the import side, and also to guarantee that any kind of vehicle has some good roadworthiness conditions to operate when we would like to transform this vehicle to electric, or when we want to use it as an internal combustion vehicle. So that is very important to guarantee that the vehicle is in good conditions when are coming from the exporters from the export countries to the import countries. I would like also to thank for all the participants for that we have in the webinar, and also for those that have placed some questions. We are going to share those questions with our colleagues in pManifold, with our panelists, and thank you for participating in this webinar. I think the last webinar of the year. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you everyone for joining in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.